Good afternoon. I have the lovely G Campbell with me. She is here to talk about her new book. So, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your book?
As I say, I'm G Campbell. I wrote the Bow Street Society series of crime fiction books. So they are set in Victorian London. So the Bow Society is a group of civilian detectives, each with an ordinary job. So you've got a doctor, illusionist, artist, architect, etc., who, as well as doing so they use their knowledge and skills from their ordinary jobs to then solve the cases that they're assigned to by the scientist clerk, Miss Becca Trent. So depending on what the case is, depends on who gets called in. So the combination of detectives changes each time. So the books are set 896, 897. The first in the series being the case of the curious client, and the most recent book that I released is book 7 in the series, Case of the Fatal Flaw.
Um, One thing that I always love when I talk to you is you've always done some cool kind of research.
Yeah.
So, what cool kind of research have you had to do for this one?
So for Fatal Flaw, it's actually set in a theatre, it's a fictional theatre in the West End, called the Crescent. So I had to do a lot of research into not just like the theatre itself, the structure and how it works, mechanics, but also the hierarchy. So like the jobs within the theatre, and that took quite a lot of time to sort of obviously like sort of research there was little sort of changes and little sort of differences. So for example, sort of like we're used to back like now having like, you know, the house lights coming down and it being dark because they've been silent while a play is going on, whereas back then they routinely kept the house lights up because people like to see who else is in the theatre, get a bit of gossip, see who so and so's come with, and then also they, you know, they would talk in their audience frequently over the actors. So there's stuff like that really that has helped me sort of shape the setting and the you know, actually the story, and actually a lot of that actually helped inform the mystery as well. So that was one thing that I did not research into, but also in this book as well, we delve into the world of asylums and mental health and how people were committed into an asylum back in 1897. So without going much further away, that's another aspect which I had to do a lot of research. And I actually had um, the curator at the Museum of the Mind actually gave me a lot of help with that and actually a lot of advice on that. So there's very lots of sort of getting a lot of research that went into the background of that.
Wow, I bet that was fascinating and horrifying.
It was fascinating, but at the same time, it sort of did surprise me in the sense that how things had actually changed by 1897. Because obviously you did have the days of people trapped in asylums, so they relatives could take all their money, but they'd become a bit more self-aware about that. So there wasn't with legislation, it wasn't easy to put somebody in an asylum by 1897. So it did sort of go against sort of the stereotypes and some of my assumptions, and also, you know, obviously treatments, mental health is not as evolved as it is now, but essentially the doctors at the heart of it were trying to help people. So again, looking into their sort of ideas of therapy and treatment and how, especially at like something like Bedlam, how they dealt with their patients is actually really interesting to sort of delve into that and just to try to challenge those assumptions and stereotypes really.
Yeah, that's interesting actually, because yeah, you have I know that they just chucked women in asylums to get them out of the way, and obviously kids with disabilities and stuff. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and hysteria is from hysterectomy, which is linked to the womb and stuff, isn't it? So,
Yeah, yeah.
sort of stuff is linked to women.
But it's interesting, like in looking at sort of Bedlam specifically, if say like the resident physician resorted to mechanical restraints for their patients, they actually had to log that, and then had every week they had the board of governors meeting. They had to actually go in front of them and justify why they'd used that particular restraint. So there was a bit more accountability. It wasn't just to do what you want. Do you know what I mean? So and but also a lot of places were trying to move away from that as well, though, trying to do a bit more therapeutic stuff like having them be more in the garden, a bit more active, and a bit more sort of less restraining and more sort of trying to get them to the point where at least they could function.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I don't think I've ever asked you before, but when you're writing, obviously you're writing in London in a certain time, so you must be researching what's happening in London at that time. Are you following, everything that's going on? Because that wasn't quite the time of Jack the Ripper, was it? Was he?
Jack the Ripper was 1888, so it's
Oh my
several
God.
years after Jack the Ripper. I think the second book there's reference to Jack the Ripper because there's a prostitute who dies in book two. So somebody's asked the question: Is it could it be a Jack the Ripper case? And the surgeon's like, no, you know. But I did sort of consciously try to move away from that because people do think, oh, is it Sherlock Holmes or is it Jack the Ripper? But I don't tend to use real events in the sense of things that happened at that time, but I will try to use real locations. I don't tend to use, I move away from using real people, but I might use somebody who might be based on somebody or inspired by a particular type of person. But as much as sort of I can, sort of like I say, the technology, the settings, a little bit of the attitudes and that sort of thing. I try to be as accurate as possible with the language. So in this one, in book 7, there's a lot of sort of theatrical slang that they use. There's actually I've got a glossary of terms in that as well. But in this one, they also travel up to Birmingham. So there's several of the buildings they go to in the book that don't exist anymore. But again, there's a book, Lost Birmingham, Lost Buildings of Birmingham, which again had photographs and a bit of descriptions of what the interiors would have been like. So again, when they go to those buildings, it's how they would have been like in 1897. So
If you had to sort of research the street names and vehicles and things like that as well to make
yeah,
it
so yeah, so
easy.
when I do London, I use several things to place, like especially like suspects' homes and stuff. So I'll always first of all refer to Charles Booth's poverty maps because it tells you first of all what class of people lived on what street and what houses. And then I would use that to then there's a London pictured archive which has all the photographs. A lot of the picture archives photographs actually have interiors of buildings as well, so you could see what they look like. So early 20th century, but it's still sort of like towards that era. And then I'll just pair those together. And also, I've got all the omnibus timetable, the tram timetable, the underground timetable stations, that sort of thing. I also use a book called The Queen's London, which was published in 1896, which has photographs and descriptions from various locations around London. But yeah, the picture archive and the Boost poverty map is very, very good for pinpointing actual streets. I do try to name actual streets. What I try to do with houses, though, I'll try to find what is the existing highest number and go one or two above that. So people don't get people randomly, not that it never happened, but somebody was to randomly go to somebody's house, like, oh, this was the house in that book. At least the actual numbers included in the book, it doesn't actually physically exist itself. But it was quite funny because my friend was like, so where on Bow Street would the Bow Society house have been? I'm like, the Bow Society house itself didn't exist. It was like, oh, I always assumed it was an actual building that just wasn't here anymore. I'm like, no, unfortunately, that actually itself never existed. But the rest of the police station that I use on Bow Street does. Obviously, the building's still there, but it's now a hotel. But it has got the Bow Street Police Museum at the side.
Yeah, I must go to these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's well on my list of things to do. I went to the one in Edinburgh yesterday, so eventually.
Yeah. I do quite like a good police museum. I've been to one in Bow Street. I went to the lockup in Birmingham. That was really interesting. Obviously I've interviewed quite a few sort of curators of police museums and archives for my blog and stuff. So just basically just want to be a police. Well, I want to be a police officer basically. So, but also couldn't be a police officer. So I've just got to live my dream through writing and through other people. So
Could you not be like one of the special constables now? Do you need?
no, it's still my eyesight. So because my health and I could peripheral vision and everything, I just couldn't actually be any. I could possibly be in the office, but I don't want to be in the office. I want to be in CID cracking the cases. I don't want to be like typing up the emails. I want to be like in the thick of it.
Of course. Well, yeah, that's
Yeah. But yeah, yeah. So unfortunately, but I've always known that since I was young. So it's just one of those things. So
yeah, yeah. So I mean, you're kind of living your dream through writing. So,
oh yeah. So
do you have a plan for how long the series is going to go on for? I mean, the Bow Street must have ended at some point.
so the actual Bow Street, so obviously Rise is a fictional group, but Bow Street Police Station went on till the 1990s, and then obviously the court itself was in the early 2000s. But the actual My series, it's going to finish at book 10.
Okay, I'll see. Do you have plans to?
Yeah, it's always been to finish at book 10 because the main plot arc that runs throughout the series will be resolved by book 10, and all the sort of little character plot lines will also be resolved by book 10. I think I'll probably leave it to a certain extent. There will be options to maybe continue if I wanted to, but it won't be reliant on things being resolved for me to continue basically. So once you've read book 10, you'll feel satisfied as a reader that everything's been neatly tied up, and if I never write another one again, you'll feel satisfied. But I know people who follow the series might want me to do more. But at the moment, I think that's as far as it will go at the moment.
And then if you thought beyond to that, are you sticking in that century, or you thinking contemporary?
Well, there's one particular character who people really like, one of the police officer characters I would quite like maybe doing a more police procedural with him and a bit more of his world as a police officer back then. Well, so a bit less civilian and more sort of, yeah, procedural and more a bit darker and a bit more grittier. Um, Also, I like the idea of doing spin-offs with some of the characters, but playing around with genres. So I've got one character who is a spiritualist, so maybe do a bit more haunted house type horror story with him, and another one who is like a thief, it's like illusionist, maybe do some bit more sort of a thriller type thing with him. But otherwise, I've always liked hard-boiled 1940s New York crime fiction. So if I would, I might, I'm toying with the idea of starting a new series, but doing moving forward in time and actually having it sort of set around then.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, that sounds wicked.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I mean, 'cause I did before I wrote the Bow Society when I was younger. I did actually have a duo of detectives, which I've written. I did write three novellas for, which have never been published. So I am tempted again to, but that's set like 1930s England. So I'm tempted to maybe revisit those, polish them a bit, and then publish them possibly. But again, it's just options really at the moment.
Yeah, I know
So
it's tough, isn't it?
yeah, but so while I'm obviously now on book 8 now, so I'm two-thirds of the way through this series. I just want to get this done now, and then just then see where I want to do after that.
How long does it take you roughly to write the book?
So normally, I mean, so I tried to get a one book, one main full-length book out, and one short story collection out per year. There's a bit of a 2 year gap between the sixth and seventh book. A, because I lost my mum sadly, so there's a lot of personal stuff going on there. I also revisited the series Bible, so I basically planned out books 7, 8, 9. And then on this book itself is the longest book in the series. Is it actually paperback form was over 600 pages long, so it's the biggest one in the series. So that again took a long time to write, but generally so I've got the chapter plan breakdown done for book 8, the plot plan done for book 8. So I'll be starting that very soon, and hope the plan is to get that out by this time next year. Back at that sort of schedule of like, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can't write any quicker than that. I know a lot of other people could get several books out a year. That's just beyond me.
See, I'm always fascinated by people that plan as well, because for me that's just my worst nightmare. I couldn't even, because by the time I've done it, I'd be like, yeah, I know what happens now, and I don't want to write the
Well,
book.
you see, you think though, you think I've got this nice, lovely plan. I know what the characters are going to do, and you start writing it, and then, especially with my stories, because they have like meetings where they discuss the case. Somebody go, have you thought about this? They're like, no, I haven't thought about that. But now just you have to research that, you talk amongst yourselves back in a minute, type thing. But again, like characters will do when you write for characters so often and so much, you get to know them on a subconscious level. And they do start to do their own thing to a certain extent. And they do things that you don't want them to do. So you've got to go around the house a little bit to get back to where you want to do. So 9 times out of 10, the plot plan I start with is not necessarily the book they end up with. So
Are you
but
more
I
restricted by, because of the time period you're setting it in? You've got more rules maybe than setting it. Like when I write a book, apart from technology, I'm pretty free, because some stuff I can make up that might happen, or whereas you're kind of restricted in some ways because everything has happened.
Yeah, I mean, because they are obviously civilians, they haven't got necessarily the restrictions of the police, but at the same time, they haven't got the authority of the police. So whatever they discover, they have to eventually pass over to the police and rely on them to make an arrest if they decide they want to or not. But again, like I say, it's very much I might decide, oh, I want to use a particular poison, but then if they can't detect that poison back then, I have to abandon that idea and do something else. But again, some of the tests for poisons was quite basic. I mean, one of them was literally just taste the sample. And if your mouth starts going tingly and numb, there's poison in it. Do you know what I mean? It's like maybe not the safest way of doing it. But again, like there's emergent forensics that we're more familiar with. Obviously not DNA, and everything, but stuff like fingerprints was emerging and that sort of thing. But again, it was admissible in court. So in that sense, you're not as restricted. Because obviously the society rely very much on their own personal knowledge and experience from their own jobs rather than actually. So the surgeon's quite good in terms that he's got all the science and that sort of thing behind him and how to test and stuff like that. But generally, it's really down to their own sort of wits and own life experiences that they actually then solve the crimes with. But like I say, I do try to, where I can, sort of again go against the, the conceptions of that era. So I've got all my members as a qualified lady doctor. So even though they weren't common back then, they were still did exist. And she's got obviously a husband who is quite supportive of her, but she has her own private practice out of her house. So she'll sort of, treat like wealthy ladies, but obviously she'll go out to like the slums and offer free medical aid to them because she can use the private practice to subsidize that. So again, it's sort of those sort of challenges the conceptions of that era. And I do try to have like strong women and try to have like representatives of different areas, different people of society in the books as well.
Have you ever been writing and thought, oh God, I'd love to have DNA right now? I don't
No,
know how to get out of this hole and I need
I
DNA.
haven't. Not necessarily DNA, but I've had a couple of times where I thought it'd be really handy if they could just take their mobile phone out right now and be like, "Excuse me." And I've got to think, well, how wealthy are they? Would they have had a telephone? If they had a telephone, is the person they're calling, would they have had a telephone? And if they haven't got a telephone, how are they going to get this message to them? So it's either a messenger boy or, but then I suppose I did read once, someone once said that basically, the one thing is that it might be a bit slow, but at the same time, everybody's in the same boat. So it's like, it's obviously a lot more slowed down. But yeah, that sometimes is the more difficult thing, is actually the communication side of how to get things to people quickly. I mean, one of the stories, the murderer uses Miss Trent's system of sending envelopes to members to basically try to lure one of the members out of the house. So, so that it is open to, manipulation. But yes, that is more sort of, yeah, it's, I mean, obviously fingerprints, again, you could argue, well, if you had fingerprints, they could it was so and so. But again, they're conscious of what can they give the police that the police can then use. So it's yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I remember a time before mobile phones, and I remember having to go down to the
The
home.
payphone.
Yeah. And yet now I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, right in contemporary, it's like bloody mobile phones. What have they done with their phone? Where is it? Where's it pinged from? Oh,
Yeah. The
settle
social
down.
media and stuff as well. Yeah, I mean, God, like, obviously in my books, I suppose the news media, social media is just it's the local newspaper that the journalist always seems to get the stories and doesn't necessarily put the best light. That's the closest going to get to social media, I'm afraid.
Oh yeah, I know. I'd love to put them in this time. They'd freak out, I think, wouldn't they? They'd just have nervous breakdown.
Yeah, have you seen the sort of the comedy Year of the Rabbit, and they sort of play on that a little bit, and like the inspector picks up the phone and he's like talks like, oh, he's going it's like he's hung up. It's like, oh,
Well,
it's pulling the wire, goes, he's in the next room. It's like, no, it's somewhere else on the end of the telephone.
well, if you've seen, apparently they're taking out analog clocks in exam rooms because kids can't read the time on them.
Oh,
I don't know, how depressed is that, honestly?
I know, but I think most of the places we see kids with a book and they're trying to swipe the page. You're like, just turn the page. You don't need to swipe.
I might have done that in a book though.
Well, I read on Kindle, so I don't always swipe. But yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I generally read on the Kindle, so then when I do get a paper book, occasionally I forget. I'm like, what's it? Oh, right.
why is it not? Why is it not going?
Yeah, why is it not working?
Why is the font not getting any bigger?
Yeah. Oh man, it's bad times. Bad times. I'm disappointed in myself as well. I can't believe I'm one of those people.
I'm going to say that you're probably very, very tired and stressed at times. So you weren't in your right mind. We'll use that excuse.
Yeah, but what about the rest of the time when I'm just an idiot? Like I'm fine. I'm just an idiot. I'm okay with this now. I've accepted it.
It's just a nuance of modern living, isn't it? Really. So
Yeah, we have too much to think about and remember and stuff and passwords and things. Oh,
and I don't know how I remember half my passwords. I don't remember. I don't actually remember what happens in my books, let alone what's happened in my passwords. I mean, I frequently have to go back to previous book and be like, what did they say again? What did they say about that? Oh, that's okay. That's not the draft I remember. Okay, obviously I went with something else then. Because I
I'm
have
not.
done that. I've had the conversation and I've realised that what they're referring to was another draft I didn't actually include in the final book. So I've had to go, no, quick, go back and
Oh
change
no.
it.
Do you have like intense character profiles of all? Because you use different ones all the time. Do you have to have like are you a spreadsheet person? Do you have a
Oh,
spreadsheet?
God. A spreadsheet confuses me. I'll get confused with spreadsheet. So each character has their own character profile on a Word document, and I do that for every character that comes in all the books, so suspects and sort of main members. I started adding stuff to the main members' character profiles, and I kept forgetting. I remember I put stuff in like um when it comes to relevant again, but I don't I think I tend to sort of, because I've just got things to refer back to, I tend to refer back to them quite a lot. But yeah, I mean, you do have the main core characters who you're following their plot lines, which like Mr. Locke with his heroin addiction, and the will they, won't they with Miss Dexter and Mr. Maxwell. And then obviously got the conspiracy storyline with Conway, Jones, Kate Wolf, Lee, and Miss Trent. So you sort of remember those bits. But then you have the more minor characters who really are just there just to offer a bit of expertise. I mean, it's 15 members altogether that you know of, but I do know in my mind it's probably more members that you just never met because there's just not had that need to have them in the cases yet. But that's why the casebook's quite good, because you have a couple of members who've only ever appeared in the casebook series and not actually ever in the main series itself. So, but yeah,
Yeah,
have the profile have like their name, their nickname, their title, they're married, got siblings, family, occupation, example, their speech, personality, likes, dislikes, weaknesses, and their basic goal, which sometimes just like live a quiet life. Never
that sounds
happens.
good. Yeah, I mean, I must do this. I sort of have, and I remember some stuff. I've never included birthdays yet. I don't think I've really included, but no, I might have included eye colour. So I think it's something that I need to do. I'm not a spreadsheet person either. I hate them.
Yeah, I think I include birthdays mainly because of the police characters. They could only join at a certain age, so I needed to make sure they were old enough, and with the height, they had to be tall enough because obviously height restriction was still a thing back then. So I had to make sure all the police characters were a certain height. But then you've got Inspector Wolf, who is even taller than the average person, so he's like over 6 foot. So he's quite a sort of figure. But then it's good to know. But then the thing is, with me, I'm terrible at actually then making them, because the time moves forward in the books. I'm terrible at actually then aging them to a certain extent. They're still like late 20s something, and really they should be, But I think nobody's noticed so far. But then also I think people, because of what happens to them, I think they forget how old they are. So I think people think Miss Trent's a lot older than she actually is. She's in her 20s. Again, they think Jones is older than he is, and he's like in early 30s. So I think age sometimes doesn't always come into it. But again, with families and like siblings, and you've got to work out how old would the mother have to have been to actually had this character who's now in their 20s, you know what I mean? So birthdays, that's quite handy. But then also stuff like birth certificates, you need to know the birthday because birth certificates they were brought in the 19th century, but it was just a bit in the beginning when they didn't have them. So again, it's like, would it be a birth certificate or would it be a parish record? So it's that sort of thing as well.
So much to think about.
Yeah, so I was like, that's the thing, but that's the thing. What I've said to people, like when they have the meetings, they have the character, the member who's basically got to be the expert in their field. I've then to a certain extent got to be an expert to then put the words in their mouth, especially with a lawyer who's got to quote acts and regulations and this, that, and the other, and it's got to sound very knowledgeable. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, as long as you can do it and no one complains, then that's fine, I think.
Yeah, it normally gives the salient points. But yeah, so I've had to look up like divorce law, like what happened, what the options were to divorce, what grounds could you divorce on. Obviously, men had more options than women, but stuff like birth certificates, poison regulation, when that was all brought in terms of signing the poison book. Yeah, and yes, and also with like the theatres, they had the theatre acts, so they had to, at the point where I'm writing, they had to send everything to the Lord Chancellor to approve their play, their manuscript before they could put it on. So it's all that sort of stuff as well. That again, somebody has to mention at some point, which it's yes, I've got a lot of random files on my computer.
It was quite a busy time for new laws and acts and stuff as well, wasn't it? So
Yeah, and amendments and that sort of thing, and it's just So it's handy having a solicitor character in the group because he can sort of get through the mire of all the legal stuff, and obviously you can tell them where they stand and things. And also when it comes to like suspects who they need to maybe help out in a legal situation, he can kind of step in and be like, well, I recommend you do this and this, so that is quite handy. But yeah, so it's been interesting. But like I say, it's a lot of stuff that because you find stuff when you research, and you always find stuff that when it was amended again, like in the early 20th century or the 60s, you've got to go back one step further before that. What was it acted before that? So because that can catch you out as well. Like between like you think, oh, this is the act. This is the act they're going to refer to, and you think, oh wait, but there's another one after that, which before when I'm writing, so I need to now go to that one now. What's changed in it? It's very wordy, all very wordy as well. You just go through the legalese, just like, just get to the point. What's the point?
Oh yeah, they do like to fill out these things with posh.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah. I think we had to know some of them for forensics, and oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't even remember what they're called now. ISOs or something. We had to know forensics have got like a certain amount of stuff we need to know those as well. My goodness, as well. Just
Yeah.
very legal. Everything just had a process or a number or something.
Yeah. I mean, you can see the logic behind it, but it's a lot, like I say, a lot of information to take in.
Yeah, and remember, and then
Yeah.
not get for some rush hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any reviews that have picked you up on something that you've done wrong? I mean, it doesn't sound like you would because you researched so thoroughly.
It's normally misuse of words, like the misspelling of brooch was a bit of a bone of contention because I brooch is in brooch you wear rather than broaching a subject, and I think because my editor, she did check when she was edited, but she told both applicable, but someone's like, no, it needs to be the other kind of brooch. So that I had to go back and actually change that. But in terms of the historical actually, I think sometimes people maybe think I put a bit too much effort or a bit too much information in. But then at the same time, other people love that, they love that I've gone to the effort of actually finding the floor plan of Scotland Yard. So when he's walking around Scotland Yard, it's like that how it would have been back then, So and my writing style is a bit quite descriptive. So I think some people find that a bit difficult to get into. But then other people say again they love that because it's sense of place and against sense of characters and everything. So it's really got to make a decision. But in terms of so it's mainly like misuse of word or one of the first book was in the third edition now because I've changed it. I've edited it, gone back in the service. This is the third incarnation of it. But the first edition, somebody had more umbrage with the fact that the Canadians swore than the brutal murder in the hallway. Because like, no, Canadians don't swear. Canadians are lovely, and like they're Canadians are human beings too. Yeah, so that was what they said from 5 star to 1 star because the Canadian was never swearing. I'm like, okay.
That's harsh. It's funny actually because I saw someone in a group asking someone had put that something smarted or something smarts, and obviously they were American and they didn't understand what it meant. And they're like, "Is this right?" And I was like, "Yeah, we use that."
So
But they
I guess
just
you
said
broke
that
up a bit there.
they've never heard it before, which I found really interesting because to me it doesn't seem that unusual, but perhaps it is in America where they've never heard the phrase before. So
Sorry, you broke up a bit when you were saying what the phrase was. I missed what the phrase was. Sorry. Sorry.
it's smarts or it's smarted.
It's smart. I thought that
Yeah.
was an American phrase.
Well, they had never heard of it, and I mean, I assume they're American, perhaps they weren't, but even still, like I thought that was pretty common,
Yeah.
but
I
they
mean,
thought it was wrong.
yeah, when I sort of use, there's been a couple of occasions where I've used actual sort of genuine Victorian slang. So I've got to have either some to make it obvious from the context what it's referring to, or have something go, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, you're never going to win anyway, are you, for
No.
everybody? But as long as you get it mostly right, I guess.
Yeah.
Still can't believe they went down from a one, from a five to a one over swearing. That's just
Because it was a Canadian swearing. And it's funny actually because I've actually got a Canadian voice actor reading the first book now, and he loves it. He's like, I love this. I love this character. It's so refreshing because they're not like this stereotypical Canadian. They're like he just speaks his mind, and he's like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Canadians are lovely from my experience, but yeah, they're human, and I'm pretty sure they
I've
swear
got
as much as anyone else.
yeah. So I mean, it's in the third edition. I have dumbed down the swearing. But like he's still just the same character though. He's still just a bit bullshit, but doesn't care really. So bit of a dividing character.
Um, I've got two favourite questions at the minute that I keep asking, so you'll be safe in them when you do UK Crime Book Club. The first
Okay.
one is, if you were able to relive one moment of your author career, what would it be, and would you do anything differently?
Oh God.
Nice, easy question for you.
Um, because there's been so many sort of highlights really. I suppose for me the biggest sort of, for me personally the most biggest watershed moment was when I was picked for the UK Crime Book Club anthology Criminal Shorts, because that opened so many more doors for me, and so many more readers actually found my work because of that. And even now people are still reading those short stories and actually come in and buy my book and everything. So that, for somebody to actually have faith and actually thought my work was good enough to be with all these big names in that anthology, it was really, something. And then obviously being at the first year Crime Book Club live event as well was really good. That was really enjoyable. And again, got readers from that who then come went to Books on the Beach last year. So, I think every little moment where you have a reader reach out to you, go, oh, I love your books. When's the next one coming out? I love this character. That's what makes it all worth it, because that's who you write for at the end of the day. And what would I do differently? I probably would have got an editor from the very beginning. Because I just edited myself, had my friend edit it, and I was a bit green around the gills, really. And I think I should have really got an editor from the beginning. So that was one of the biggest things I'd do differently. But I always knew I was writing the first Both Sided book that I would self-publish. That was my decision. And I wanted to keep control of the brand, keep control of the books. And I haven't regretted that. So I wouldn't necessarily do that differently, but yeah, definitely get an editor.
Yeah.
And maybe actually wait until maybe I'd written the first couple of books as well and then release them. So I'll be a bit ahead of myself. Where at the moment I'm like writing, publishing, writing, publishing, writing, publishing.
Yeah.
So if I do a new series, that would what I'll probably do. I'll get the first couple under my belt and then start releasing while I'm writing the third one. So I've got a bit of breathing space.
And my second favourite question at the minute is, if you were to ring your best friend and say you'd been arrested, what would they assume you'd done?
Hit somebody. Not that I would ever hit anybody, but if my sister, she'd be like, "What's she done?" But that's what she'd be like, "Who'd you hit?" I'm like, "Nobody," because we always have that running joke of like, if we know, if you're stressed at work and everything, like, when we we talk to each other every day, and like I'll say at the end of the call, "Don't hit anybody tomorrow." She's like, "I won't," because sometimes you do feel like you want to go, ah, but yeah. I would never do that, but that's what my sister would say. She would think that she would think that finally broken and actually fought and hit somebody.
Oh, yep, totally can relate, especially
Yeah,
as
yes, that's probably what she'd think. Yeah,
how I didn't hit anyone. I don't know. To this day, I don't know how I didn't hit anyone because
yeah,
we were
sit on your
behind us.
hands.
Um, where will we find you over the summer? Are you going to be appearing at any festivals and events?
So I am going to be at the Dark Side of Brighton book festival on the 8th of March. On the historical crime fiction panel, which I'm really looking forward to. So it's with Georgina Clark and Julie Anderson. I'm really looking forward to talking to them. And then I'm on the 22nd of March, I'm in Newark for Fiction Fans and Ball Gowns book sign event, multi-genre book sign event. Then in April, on the 26th of April, I'm in Birmingham doing the Book Loves in Birmingham book event at the Holiday Inn NEC. Then in October, I'm at the Office of the Armories at the Royal Armories in Leeds, 12th of October, doing that again, book sign event, multi-genre book sign event. So, but I have applied to be at the Writer's Block area in London Comic Con in May. I'm waiting to hear back from that. But also my local literary festival held a book fair last year in December in the local library, and I put my name down again for that possibly in December again. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, do that. So I'm getting out quite a bit this year.
Amazing, and I highly recommend if you're in any of those places to go and see TV, mostly because she wears incredible outfits, and
Yeah.
also because she doesn't give away free signed books apart from her events. So if you wanted to sign book, you could only get it in person.
Yeah. Something a bit more special. Yeah.
Yes, which
Yeah.
just reminds me I need to check. after our conversation the other day that I completely forgot about until this second. So
Yeah.
I will do that. Unless you think there's anything major that I haven't asked you, I don't think I really want to questions for you today.
Just to say that if anybody wants to buy my books, they're from Amazon, Kindle Limited, Kindle paperback, or you can go to my website, boatsociety.com, where you can find a bit more information about the books themselves, the characters, and also there's a character guide you can download on ebook from Amazon, or like I say, at book events, I give that away for free. So that's a whole little, each page's got the silhouette of the character and also a bit of information about them, the quotes, and also includes the police officer characters in there as well.
Awesome, and all I have to say is thanks so much.
Thank you for having me again. Thank you.